thank you. We've been looking forward to this event for many, many weeks, especially for those who are authors, aspiring writers, writer wannabes, or just want to be able to tell your story and possibly not have enough time to tell it. And that's why Matt is here to give us all the ins and outs on what it takes to get that book written and out there and use it as a business tool. So Mr. Matt, take it away.
Lane, thank you. Thank you to Alan and V50 for allowing me to put this on for you guys. I want to keep it as interactive as possible. So if I start rambling and you have a question or you need clarification, feel free to just stop me in my tracks. Hopefully I'll be able to figure out where I left off and pick it back up. But thankfully, I actually put together a presentation, which means I'm not just winging it for you guys. So you should feel honored. I usually just wing everything. So hopefully that doesn't blow up in my face. So let me share my screen. All right. So today we're on book planning and outlining workshop. This is the first in the 3-part series. So next week we will be going into the writing and publishing process and then closing out with marketing and use of a book as a business tool. One of the things we tell all of our clients to start is progress, not perfection. Right? People always ask me the best way to start a book. The answer is the same for everybody. Just start writing. No matter what it is, there should be a certain level of preparation, but do not allow yourself to become paralyzed by how am I going to fill 200 pages? How am I going to talk about the 25 things that I'm a subject matter expert on? You start with word 1, you get the most pressing thoughts, ideas out of your head. And more times than not, it's going to guide you in the direction that you need to go. Worst case, if it doesn't, you wind up with 5, 10, 30 pages of just brain barf, as I like to call it. We can then work with that and figure out how to turn that into, how to refine that into actual gold. We're going to cover all of these points in detail today. This is a 10-point checklist, and I believe I gave it to Alan and Lane to send out. We give this to all of our clients, prospective clients. It's a high-level overview into the planning stage of writing a book. Because even though just starting to write is the most effective way to move forward, at some point you do want to have a plan in order to do something with the book. If you're just writing for yourself, I mean, hey, then you don't need this. But if at some point you would like to share it with others, bring business into your company, attract new clients, we want to have some kind of structure so that you're not going to spend a couple months, or in the case of some folks, years working on this labor of love and then not know what to do with it. So first thing to think about is identify your goal. Do you want to just sell a bunch of books? There are some people who say yes, but I've got a hard truth. For making money, most authors do not get rich selling books. Unless your last name is King or Patterson, you need to sell, even they need to sell an epically large amount of books, but it's just not going to happen for most people. If you do, it's a grind and it's just not enjoyable. Some clients just want to be a bestseller. They want to figure out how to manipulate the rankings on Amazon and say they have that best-selling badge. That can be great for credibility. But one of the questions we always ask people is, does that really help build value? Last goal, as we see it, to write a book is to attract new clients. And this is where the real benefit to being an author is, especially for folks like ourselves who are all entrepreneurs. We all run companies, have people working for us, and depend on either other businesses or consumers for the revenue that we use to run our business. Disclaimer, the 3 don't have to be mutually exclusive. So you can still achieve bestseller status while attracting new clients. You're just going to want to know upfront what your strategy is. Next thing to think about, who is your book for? So I like to think about, as my business consultant says, focus on the psychographic profile of your reader, not the demographics, right? So the psychographic profile is the thoughts, values, and beliefs of your ideal reader. What are they going to get from reading it? What value are you going to add to their life? So does anyone have any questions on the difference between the psychographic and the demographic profile?
I think that's great. It's a great way to approach it.
Thank you, Lane.
Okay. How do you determine that, though? You've got to sit down and actually define who this is for, I guess is really, yeah.
That is correct. So John, knowing what I know about your business, and what you shared with Alan and I, the psychographic profile of your client is going to be a business owner worried about how they're going to keep their doors open because sales are down 30%.
Right.
Not a 50-year-old white male with a six-figure income. Those are going to be the demographics. The psychographic is what's keeping them up at night. Got it. Perfect. Thank you. You got it. Then the other thing, after how you're going to add value to their life, what makes you qualified to speak to them, right? Obviously, we're all experts at what we do, or at least I would hope you're an expert on something you're going to take the time to write a book about. You need to let your reader know why you're qualified to help them solve that problem so they're not staying up at night. Next question on the checklist is, do you have access to your audience? So where are your ideal readers? Where are they hanging out? Are you a member of an organization or association where these business owners in John's case may be? Who in your network knows you're writing a book? Who in your network knows your target readers or your target clients? Because when you have the book as a business tool, there's a big difference between reaching out to your network and saying, hey, who do you know who's struggling with X? Because maybe I can help them, as opposed to, hey, my friend, my colleague, my coworker just wrote this amazing book on financial literacy or on blockchain or on increasing sales revenue. Now, that's a warm lead in, and someone doesn't feel pressured like, oh, if I speak to this person, they're trying to sell me something. They are the prime target for your book, and in reading that book, they may decide they want to work with you. Think about the hook for your book. So if you were going to write a book tomorrow, what would be a one-sentence description that you would use as your elevator pitch? Short, sweet, to the point. Don't sit there and give someone a 30-minute dissertation on how long you've wanted to write the book and the inspiration for it. All of that has a time and a place, but you want to hook someone in immediately. Give them facts and a call to action. So be equally informative and persuasive. Next, the content. What is actually going into your book? Make a list of everything that you want to talk about. So again, I'll pick on Amir for a second. Let's say it's about financial literacy. He may pick the 5, 10, 15 most pressing things that he sees out there working with clients that keep them from reaching their retirement goals or keep them paying high interest debt. At this stage of the game, don't censor anything. Make the list. Compile any resources. So if you're going to cite facts, figures, current events, make a list of those websites, books that you are going to lean back on. So when you start your writing, you're not scrambling and saying, oh, damn it, where was that article about this? Because when that happens in the process, it's going to slow you down. And if it happens enough time where you can't find what you're looking for, you're going to get frustrated and stop. So be as organized as possible. Much the same for anything we do in life. If you're not organized, eventually things are going to be harder. As I mentioned earlier, don't censor yourself. Ask other people what they find to be most valuable on the subject. Use actual wording from clients you've helped. Right? So let's go back to John. If John's writing a book on, sales growth, ask clients who you've turned their sales departments around what that meant to them. How would they describe the service that you provided, the end result? Because that's going to resonate with more people like that who want to work with you. Later on, you can decide what to eliminate. When you have a ton of content, you got, pages upon, and you start organizing it, that's where you say, all right, maybe this doesn't fit. You may find you have 2 or 3 books in you, and now it's time to start categorizing them for the next project. We find this all the time with our clients. Now, chapter structure. This, most first-time writers, we don't expect to know this off the top of their head, which is where we come in either in coaching or writing. But how do you want to deliver this content to your reader? What is going to resonate with them? So you can do narrative, which is very conversational. So think of like you just there kind of speaking to your reader, your life story, what you do in a very conversational way. Can have sections. I'm a big fan of the sections where each chapter you get a high level overview of what the topic is. And then you go down into some more granular, maybe real life examples of clients that you've worked with. A final section for the chapter, giving the reader a homework assignment or something that they can do on their own. The more engaging your book is, the more likely your reader is to go to the next page. And ultimately, that's our goal when we write a book. It's not just to sell it, right? Especially if you're looking to bring in clients. We want them to get to the end of the book. By the end of the book, they should know, like, and trust you and want to find out more about you as a person, you and your business, and how they can work with you personally. Because you've taken out that learning curve of them feeling comfortable saying, gee, I don't know if I want to spend that much money to hire them. They feel like they know you. Some clients do a workbook inside the book or as a complement where they give their target clients like a ton of exercises to do. You can do a parable. So I don't know if any of you have, the best example I can think of was the Go-Giver. So if any of you have ever read the Go-Giver, you know what I'm talking about. If you haven't, I highly recommend it. John David Mann is also a friend of our show. He's been on the podcast twice. But a parable is where you're telling a story through a story. Fictional characters living out an experience that by the end, the reader goes, I see what they did there. So you're teaching them without teaching them. Then we're going to go into thinking about your key points. So after you've compiled and organized your content, go back through the material. Identify recurring themes. The reason we do this is those recurring themes are most likely going to be your chapters that you talk the most about. Then start to decide if there's a logical flow, right? Do you need to organize your material chronologically? So for me, if I was writing a book on how to write a book, like this presentation had to be done chronologically. If I started from the end, it wouldn't make as much sense. Not every book or subject is going to be that way. Some of them you can organize interchangeably. After you've done all that, ask yourself, is there something missing? Now that I have everything in order in the order I want to tell it, is there anything that would stop the reader from being able to connect all the dots? If so, fill in the blanks, repeat the process, make sure it's all there. So now we're on to research. We spoke a little bit about books, websites. So if you're including the thoughts of others, please give credit where credit is due. I cannot tell you, and Marissa, who works with me, is on this call, and she can attest to this, how many clients, either unbeknownst to them or beknownst to them, openly plagiarize other people's words. If you're going to take someone's intellectual property or a verbatim statement, make sure you give the credit where credit's due. There's nothing wrong with using a quote or using other people's information. I'm sorry if I sound like you're back in high school right now, but make sure to give the citation or it's plagiarism. If you're using case studies of your existing clients or people in your personal circles, get permission to use the stories or change the names to protect sensitive information or identifying kind of criteria that you may not have permission to use. There's nothing worse than putting your whole book together and possibly using the foundation as 2 or 3 case studies that you find out at the end of the book your clients are not okay with you sharing. So I mentioned earlier, the goal is to get the reader to get to the end of the book. Retention is a key point of that. Have you made it easy for readers to remember the key takeaways that you wrote about? Or don't have the most important piece of information buried in 4 paragraphs. Call it out. At the end, you can even bullet point the important things that you spoke about in that chapter. We just had a client who did it in one of the best ways I've ever seen, and the feedback she's getting from it is incredible. Have you made it easy for the reader to put the material into action? So not just teaching them the mistakes that people make financially. Have you told them exactly how to go out and fix it? Easy steps that they can take in their own life. This one seems like a no-brainer, but a lot of people overlook it because it's a book. Did you provide any resources to bring them into your world? So if you have your own collateral, whether it be diagrams, PDFs, any type of intellectual property, include it in your book where it fits. Don't just stick it in there for a shameless self-promotion plug. But if you have a tool that helps someone with something you just spoke about at length, include it. Somewhere in the book, include your website, include an offer, even if it's in the back in the About the Author section, an offer for them to get a free consultation and make it easy, whether it be a QR code. Joe Rojas mastered this in his books of using QR codes, because let's be serious. I don't want to say people are lazy, but people are lazy. So every step that they have to take to do something decreases the odds they're actually going to do it. If you put your website in a paperback book, they have to manually go and type it. If you have a QR code, they can just snap it on their phone and they're on their website, and the phone's probably right next to the book or in their hand while they're reading the book. They're more likely to do it. Once you get them on your website, you've now brought them into your universe. Next item in our checklist, our plan for completion. How are you going to get this done in the next 6 months? I picked 6 months as an arbitrary time frame just because that's Pen for Hire's ideal time frame. We tell everyone, if you can commit to meeting once a week or at least 2 or 3 times a month for 6 months, we can absolutely get it done for you. It can be done shorter. If you need extra time, that's fine. Set yourself a realistic time frame that works for you. So how do we know what's enough time? The average business book tends to be between 35,000 and 75,000 words. That's somewhere in the area of 150 to 225 pages. If we break those ranges down, if you can write 5,000 to 12,000 words per month, or 1,200 to 3,000 words per week, you can finish that book in 6 months. And we'll speak more about this in depth during, I believe it's next week's session, where we really dive into the actual writing of the book and some best practices and ways to make that happen. But 1,200 words a week really is not unreasonable. If you only write half an hour every day, Monday through Friday, that's like 250 words in a sitting. We all send triple that in emails. Ooh, So here's a little graphic that we created for an overview of the writing process. Some of these overlap a little bit. Not everyone is going to need everything on here, but for someone who says, I want to go all in, I want to do this right. If you remember the 3 ways to measure success from earlier, which is selling a lot of books, achieving the bestseller badge, and attracting new clients, all of these items in this timeline would be a component to trying to check all of those boxes. So we start with our rough draft, which again, on average, 4 to 6 months. More to come on the difference between publishing options later, but if you decide you may want to look for a traditional publisher, early on in the process is when you should be looking for a literary agent. Literary agents require a business proposal and your first 2 chapters, as well as a chapter outline. So somewhere in the initial 1 month range is when you would start sending that out. Your book title. Some of you may be thinking, why is this third on the list? It's third on the list because it's really, while it's incredibly important, too many people do not even start writing a book because they're stuck on, they don't know what to title it. And the other side of that coin is too many people fall in love with a book title before they've even developed the content, and then find out the title has nothing to do with what they're writing about. So you can have a play saver, we call it working title. Just know that chances are it's going to change, possibly up until like the day before publication, and that's okay. The key is getting it right. I'll share a quick example on this, just so you guys get an idea. We have a client. He is a professional hockey. He was a professional goaltender for hockey. And the title, he suffered with mental depression and suicidal tendencies. The entire 6 months we were working together, he was set on something to the extent of the rise and fall of American athlete. I didn't make it, but boy, did I. And he loved the title no matter what we told him, like that was his title. About a month before completion, the light bulb went off and we changed it to All Pucked Up, which was a play on hockey pucks and, mental illness. And then the subtitle was a combination of the stuff he said earlier, an elite athlete's journey through mental or something of that nature. But that title was stopping him the entire time. Like we had to tell him, okay, we'll leave your title. And then he realized, okay, not doing myself the best service with that, because people do judge a book by its title and they do judge a book by its cover. After that, we move into your social media campaign. Around the halfway point of your rough draft, you should be working with someone who's already doing your social media, or looking for folks who specialize in working with authors and generating some type of buzz so that everyone in your network has an eye out for it. So it's not just a surprise when you're done. Hand in hand with social media, public relations. Some of us have PR people on our teams, depending the size of your firm. If not, we have a few very, very good ones who only work with authors. That campaign should start 2 months before you publish and go for at least 2 months after. Anything less than that's really a waste of money, because it takes time to get you earned media coverage where local magazines, newspapers, shows want to get you or have the ability to get you on. About 2 months prior to publishing, that's when we start thinking about our cover design. Again, depending the size of your company, if you have designers, great. We guide people through the specific technical requirements, or we can put people in touch with our own designers. Cover copy. This is almost as important as the book title. So those blurbs that you see on the back cover of a book that tell you what it's about? Don't just throw that together. When someone goes to buy a book, and for you, everyone on this call, feel free to correct me if I'm wrong. When I'm browsing for a book, the first thing that usually catches my attention is the cover or the title. Then I flip it over to see what it's about. At that point, if it's past test 1 and test 2, I will open it up and possibly scan a chapter or 2, maybe read the accolades or the recommendations in the cover, and then make my buying decision. So if your back cover copy doesn't succinctly and concisely, eloquently tell the reader exactly what they're going to get by reading your book, you just wasted that prime real estate on your book cover. Author website. If you have your own company website, you can throw your book up on there, or get an author website with a 2 direct to each other. Let the world know about the book. Editing. we handle the editing for our clients. If you're writing the book on your own, find yourself a good editor. One of my favorite things to tell clients is a good editor can make a bad writer good and a good writer great. Too many people get to this phase and decide they're going to cheap out on the editing. They're going to have a couple friends who took a college English class do the proofreading for them. They're going to catch some of your errors. They may catch a lot of your errors. They're not going to do the same job a professional editor is going to do. If you've gotten to the point where you got someone to buy your book and they make it to page 10 and found a multitude of errors, they're not going to finish reading your book. And I'll let you in on a secret. If they're not going to finish reading your book, you have no chance of them working with you now, because they're now looking at what you put out as unprofessional, and they're going to assume that that's how you do everything. Not saying that's really the case, but that's what people's perception is. Hear it all the time. Please if you finish a book, pay for editing. Then formatting and publishing. There are plenty of companies out there that do this. Again, they'll do it a la carte. We'll talk about this more next week in some of the pitfalls that come with publishing. And then one of the last things that I love when clients do, and our very own Neko is going to be doing this for some of our clients, video book trailers. So a week or so before you're ready to publish, put together a catchy 30-second video book trailer telling the world what your book is about. Because going back to not calling people lazy and trying to get their attention immediately, people are less likely to read something than they are watch something for 30 seconds, especially if the 30-second video has subtitles where they can, scroll through on their phone and watch it go. It's just going to do you a bigger service in getting people into your universe. There's a link here for the planning tool, and we're going to cover this much more next week. I'm just going to bring this up real quick so you can see it, and then I want to open it up to Q&A, because I know I kind of went through that quickly, and I would love to go back to any slide. So some of the things we spoke about in that 10-point checklist. How do you want your book to serve your readers? What will they get out of it? List them out. Imagine it's 2 years after your book was published and you're looking at the results. What's the book done for you that made the effort worthwhile? So to clarify that, another question that we ask clients when they're thinking about investing in a book project, because realistically, a book is an investment whether you write it yourself or you pay somebody else to write it. You're either investing your time, your money, or both. So it has to have a return on investment to make sense for your business. What is the lifetime value of one new client in your business? So Lane, let's say you wrote a book and that book helped you acquire one new client for your business. Ask yourself, what is my normal new client? What do I charge per month, or however your pricing works? And then say, how many of those do I need to pay for the investment in the book? If the average lifetime value of one, if you do coaching and you charge $1,000 a month, your average client stays with you for a year, it's 12 grand. Maybe you paid for the book with one new client. If your average client, if you're selling a product or a service and it's like $50, there's a multiplier, right? I'm sure you could all do the numbers, but that's the way to think about it in an ROI standpoint. Then think, what's the single event that will happen because of this book that'll cause you to break out the champagne and celebrate? So real world example on this, we have a client, we just wrapped up her project. She's a music executive first female music executive in A&R out in Los Angeles. And her celebration moment, her book launch party is Friday. She rebranded her career and she's invited 30 industry, top execs to come and attend this book launch. Primary audience, this goes back to our psychographic profile. Who do you want to be a hero for? Here's your avatar, which again, we spoke about. And again, the checklist was a yes or no. This is like our worksheet that we work with clients and have them fill it out so we get everything in one place. What's the pain they're experiencing? What's the transformation they're going to experience in their life? One paragraph idea, what the reader is going to get. Cocktail party pitch, that's that one sentence. Your North Star. And this is really for you on how you're going to use your book. I will use my book to target your client avatar by teaching them what the pain point you're solving is, which will lead to my ultimate goal of more and what your desired outcome was with this book. Then here's the question I love. Ask yourself, is that the book you want to write? We've actually had people who are like, no, that doesn't sound as exciting as I thought it would. Like, and I don't want to write about that. Okay. So let's go back to the beginning, because clearly we're not going to write a book you don't want to write. If everything there makes your heart sing and you're like, yes, I'm more invigorated than when I started the planning process, then we move in to the book structuring. This is another tool we give our clients. So your chapter brainstorming, all the ideas from all that research. Remember chronologically, what should go into chapter 1? Table of contents. Same thing for thesis, hook. A lot of technical stuff that I'm not going to bore you guys with. You can all have access to the tool, and everyone structures their writing process differently. So everything that I just took you through is best practices that I have put into place through my own writing journey over the years, that I've refined. They work well, but you may want to do it a completely different way. That's fine. Take what you like, leave the rest. As long as you're writing and you're working toward an end goal and you know what the end goal you're working toward is, that's the key takeaway from today's segment. Next week will be much more in-depth on, hey, now how do we actually write this book? And how are we going to get it out there in the world? What should I be concerned with? So I left us a little time. Like I said, I wanted to make it interactive and answer questions. So please, anyone with any thoughts, comments, snide remarks, except for Marissa.
I got a question for you, Matt. Specific to your business, what percentage of the work you do is memoirs / autobiography versus all the others?
Probably about 10%. Hold on, you disagree, Marissa?
I disagree with you, because a lot of the business books that you write have a memoir aspect to them that you sometimes fail, like you neglect that part because they have such good content in terms of their business book. But a good business book has that memoir aspect to it. So like even the client's book we were talking about, her book is it's 60% memoir.
Okay, so in all fairness, yes, I should have clarified. Thank you, Marissa. I should have clarified, Lane. Pure memoir autobiography is about 10%. Yes, I truly believe that in order to write a successful business book, you need that know, like, and trust, just like being successful in business. So your reader needs to understand a little bit about you, right? When we mentioned earlier, what makes you qualified to speak about the book you're writing? They need to know who you are, your journey, how long you've been doing it, what you've overcome, what you've helped your clients do. So yes, in that regard, there is a strong memoir component to each.
Yeah, and I asked that question just because of the writings I do is more of a personal journey, memoirish, and to use it as a business tool, it wouldn't necessarily for what I'm thinking to necessarily acquire new customers in IT and managed services. It would give me the opportunity to be able to speak to small, medium, and large groups about that journey.
So thank you, Lane, for pointing that out. One of the goals for a lot of clients, because public speakers are a big segment of who we work with, your definition of success for the project could legitimately be to just start getting on stage and the book being the door opener. If you're already getting in front of groups of people, the goal could be the next step up, to get in front of larger groups of people, or to get paid to get in front of groups of people. If you're in that fortunate category where you're already getting paid to get in front of groups of people, your goal might be to get paid more money to get in front of groups of people.
But I have stage fright, so we're going to have to work on that.
That is not something I handle.
I'm not going to lie.
I like being the ghost in the background.
Hey, Matthew, a question for you. You had mentioned, obviously, don't cheap out on an editor. Percentage of your investment in writing a book, how much is editing? Is it, 25% of it? Is it 5% of it? Is it?
I can't say on a cost as percentage basis, but to give you a general rule of thumb, if you're talking about a 200-page business book, for copy and structural editing, you're probably safely looking at about $2,500 to $3,000.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Now, again, there are some editors who charge more. There are some who charge less. That's just like everything in life.
Yep.
My best advice there is always do your homework. If you're choosing an editor and they don't have any reviews, any testimonials, anything to support it, I'm not saying anything bad about them, but I would be a little more selective. You want people who have other people they've worked for who have been happy with the finished product.
Right. Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
I was just going to ask Matthew, that was really comprehensive. Thank you. That gave me a whole outline. So you mentioned, 150 to 225 pages. That was kind of the range that you gave. And in speaking to John just now, you said 200 pages. Is that what is most well received? 200 pages? Is that the average?
So that range that I gave, again, rule of thumb, depending, we have some clients who their book was like 87 pages, but it was short, succinct, powerful. That range, let's call it the 200 pages. That's usually that sweet spot where a reader is not going to be intimidated. And I don't want to beat the lazy card, but if people don't feel like they're going to finish the book, they're not going to buy it. And when they start to see 250, 300 pages, not to say there's not 250, 300 page business books out there, they're usually by much more renowned authors like Simon Sinek or people who already have a household name. If someone's going to pick up my book, they don't want to commit the time to 300 pages. So both of the books I wrote personally, one was 179, I think there was 197 pages. We just finished a book for a client that was, I think it came in at exactly 197 pages. She asked us to beef it up a little bit. She had this mental kind of thing that she wanted to achieve 200 pages, even though really there's nothing to be said about finishing at 198 or 200. So I hope that answers the question. Really, the key is have great content, be direct, like don't beat around the bush, and like get your content across, let the reader know, like, and trust you. If you start to realize that your book is somehow approaching like 400 pages, you may very well have two books there. And I would give it some thought into how they can be segmented, because you're going to do yourself a better service by having the two books. One, from a content standpoint, if you're going to be a published author, it's twice as good to be a twice published author. We'll talk about this more next week, but since we're on the topic, from a printing cost perspective, it's cheaper to print a 200-page book than it is to print a 400-page book.
Right.
So if you're going to be ordering yourself books to use in speaking engagements or giving out to your clients, which we'll speak about in the third part of this seminar, it's better to have the lower printing cost, easier to mail, and then you can always get them to pay for your second book after you've given out the first one kind of as a hook.
And I just had one other portion to my question. You mentioned that being really organized with regards to your content, like your resources, client waivers or your story, all of that kind of stuff needs to be really organized. What's your best strategy or tool? I know that there was a resource before that you said you'll be handing out to kind of help us with the structure. What's the best tool for organizing all that stuff?
So the best tool is really going to depend on you personally. I like the tool that you'll be getting. However, I have clients who do their organization on Trello boards. There's a program called Scrivener that I've used in the past. I use it a little more for fiction. It's got an index card feature. I have one client who I think he's written 11 books, and he does sticky notes on a whiteboard and moves the sticky notes around. So there really is no right or wrong way. It's whatever works best for the way your brain works. As long as you're doing something and it's easy to manipulate, do that.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
I got one more for you, Matt. Writing and procrastination go hand in hand, at least in my world. What were, based on your client and customer experience, what were their key motivators and drivers for wanting to publish a book?
Holding it inside for too long is usually number one. By the time most of our clients get to us, they've been told numerous times they need to write a book. They've been thinking about it for years. I mean, not months, usually years minimum. And the timing was just kind of their business had gotten to a certain point, their personal development had gotten to a certain point that they just felt it was kind of now or never. Like this was the time in their life where they had the financial resources to commit, or they had their company was running itself and they had more time to commit. But yeah, most clients that come to us isn't just, hey, I decided to write a book today. Those people, once they find out the time and financial investment, go back to rethinking whether they really want to write a book.
Thank you for that.
My pleasure.
I have a question. It's a real question, I promise.
Okay.
So if you do decide to take on this process on your own and write your own book, when do you suggest bringing in somebody else into the mix? I know you talked about an agent, but just in terms of getting other people's opinions, when do you suggest bringing somebody else in to help you on your book writing journey?
Okay. Great question. And I've got to go back and add that to my presentation. So I'm going to give you my answer because I've always found this to be helpful for me. If you're going to get someone to read it, I would say when you think you're done or close to done. And here's why. If you bring someone in at the 25% point, the 50, unless it's a professional, right? Like if someone comes to us and says, hey, I started my book and I need help, that's a different story. If you're talking about your Aunt Susan, who loves to read, wait until you're done, because people have a tendency to give you their opinion and not their professional guidance. So if you involve someone at the 50% point, they could either have you second guess why you're writing the book to begin with. They can start giving you feedback and directions that really don't make sense and were never in your plan to begin with. So be confident that you've done the best you can before letting anyone else read it. And then my second disclaimer there would be, if you are letting friends and family read it, take their opinions and advice with a grain of salt. There are professional beta, even if not professional, they're called beta readers. You can find them usually just on social media, or there's groups on Facebook where people will read your book, sometimes for free, sometimes for a small, like $25, $50 fee. And they will give you their honest, I don't know you from a hole in the wall feedback. That's the way I recommend, because you don't want 10 of your relatives to tell you it's the greatest thing they ever read when it's got gaping holes in it and you're going to put it up on Amazon and the public's going to tear it apart. And you don't want your hypercritical friends to say, oh, I don't like that, or, get outside opinions who don't know you.
You got my wheel spinning, Matt.
That's the goal.
Yeah, I've got a question. Sorry, I was late. Is there something, I don't know if anybody else has asked this question, is there something that you will not tackle in terms of writing something?
There is.
Question.
So generally, as a rule of thumb, the only two things we don't touch are medical and scientific kind of technical manuals. So I don't care how inspirational your story is. If it's going to be very technical, industry jargon heavy, and it's medical or scientific, I do not have the bandwidth for it. I don't enjoy it. I have other writers other ghostwriters that are in some mastermind groups with me who excel in those areas, and I have no problem making a warm handoff, but almost everything else we'll tackle, Fred.
Okay. Did you give a little bit about your history in writing at the beginning? Because I'll go back and look at the first half of the presentation.
I did not, but I guess I can quickly do that. I think I did it at the member spotlight. So for those who don't know, I've been writing since I was a kid. Growing up in the Bronx, that was not considered a real job. However, in high school, I made a fortune writing term papers for people. So I thought for sure I could monetize it, but I was told I had to go to college and get a good job. So I went, got a finance degree, spent about 15 years working in every aspect of retail financial services you could imagine, from financial advisor, insurance sales, retail banking, retail bank management. 2017, I rediscovered writing. I wrote my first book, which was about some of the experiences I was having hiring people in the banking world. Then in 2018, I wrote my second book, which was based on all of the things I didn't learn in college and felt that I should have for the bill they gave me. Shortly after, I quit my job and went to work teaching social emotional learning to junior high school students in New York City public schools, which is actually where I met Marissa. She was my boss. Then the pandemic happened and everything got shut down. I met Joe Rojas fortuitously, and it's twist of fate, but that's what fortuitously means. And he needed help with his second book. He'd already written a book, and I really didn't understand why someone who could write a book would hire a writer. But he twisted my arm, kind of made me do it. It was one of the best experiences I've had. Then I joined Thrivers. He helped me build my business and helped me realize that there are other people out there who could benefit from what I do. And the rest is history. Since the beginning of the pandemic, we've now worked on or completed over a dozen projects.
Kudos. It's good stuff. And that segue reminded me, everybody who did a member spotlight, you can watch their video by clicking through the website.
Love it.
It's all there. This was great. This was great. Anybody got anything else? Good stuff.
Go later.
Nice, Matt. The documentation you originally sent us, I can freely get that out to everybody, correct?
Absolutely. Absolutely. If you want, I'll happily even share this PowerPoint presentation that I did if you want to get that out.
That'd be great.
Or if you want to wait until the end, I'll have my assistant compile all three into one document so everyone has the entire three-parter.
I'll get out what we covered today, so
Okay.
at least people can think about that, and don't forget everybody to get signed up for next Tuesday, part 2 of 3, and hopefully we will see everybody this Thursday so we can celebrate 2 years together.
Amazing.
Love
Thank you guys very much for showing up. I hope it was useful, and I'm looking forward to seeing you next week.
Great
Awesome.
stuff. Thanks, Matt.
Thanks, Matt.
Thanks,
See
guys.
everybody soon. Take care.
Thanks, Matt.